All right, I'm going to kick things off now, and thank you for your patience, and welcome to this conversation with Tiffany Janzen. My name is Nick Kindler, and I am the CEO, Executive Communication Coach, founder and author at Kindler and Company. And what we do at Kindler and Company is we inspire, we educate, and we empower leaders to create a better world through improved communication. Now, this program, this Communicate with Impact program, is a little bit different. What we do in our Communicate with Impact Conversations program is we have conversations with leaders about the challenges of communication. And it's so great to see people from all over the world here today, because I do know that this is a universal challenge that people have with how do we communicate the very, very complex content that we have learned and that we house up here, and how do we engage people in a way with this content. So it's great to have you here. I want to start by oddly apologizing for those of you that registered for the last session. We did have a technical challenge, but I'm so glad that you're here today. Here's the format. We're going to chat with Tiffany for about 30, 40 minutes, and then I'm going to answer some questions. But if you do have a question, please drop them into the chat, and we will endeavor to get your question answered. So welcome to everybody. I am thrilled to have our guest today is Tiffany Janzen. I'm thrilled to have you here, Tiffany. And I'm excited because often when I invite people onto this program for future guests and past guests, it's people that I've coached or worked with or done projects with, and I know them quite well. Now, I'm looking forward to get to know you because I've only recently met you, Tiffany. I've only recently met Tiffany, but here's what I do know about Tiffany, and some of you may know this already. Tiffany is doing some fascinating work at IBM as a coder and programmer. But what's really interesting is her focus on making STEM cool for anyone. And I think that, you know, I look at my business having a big, hairy, audacious goal, as they say, of helping leaders communicate with clarity and making the world a better place. Well, she's making STEM accessible and understandable. So she's a developer that started in modeling, actually, in fashion, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. And what she found is that many people get overwhelmed by technology and trying to understand it. So she saw this gap to help ease people into what technology has to offer to improve their daily lives. So, and she does this, by the way, on her Tiff In Tech Instagram and YouTube sites. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and we are going to now ideally go full screen with Tiffany and myself. So Tiffany, welcome. Nice to see you here.
Hi, Nick. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
We are getting a little bit of a, Mary Lou, if you could just make sure that folks are muted, that would be great. Thank you very much. So Tiff, let's start. I want to hear a little bit about what you do. Let's start with the day job. Is that okay? Can you tell me about the day job at IBM?
For sure. So I've been with IBM now. Actually, this month is my 1 year mark. So I've been with the company for a year now, and my title, I guess, is software developer and technical consultant. But what that really means is I get to do the software development side of things, build different products, but why it's really exciting to me anyways is the technical consulting part. So unlike for a lot of companies where you're continually building the same products or working on the same products, because I'm on the consulting side, I am always building different products for different clients. So for example, I've been on a project now for a few months, but in another few months, I'll be onto a different project with a different client. So I'm constantly I'm a forever learner. I'm always learning different technologies that I'm building for different clients.
So let's stay in the world of technology and coding for just for a moment. Give me an example of some of the technologies that you're learning about that are exciting. And by the way, we talked about a few questions. This wasn't one of them, so I hope I'm not throwing you for a loop.
Not at all.
Okay, so what is it? What are some of the technologies as a non-coder? What are some of the technologies that are exciting you right now?
You know what? What's really exciting me right now, I sat down at the beginning of this year and thought, what do I want? What does my next year look like as far as my learning goals? What do I hope to kind of specialize in this year or learn further, deep dive into? And for me, it was the cloud. So whether it be AWS or Red Hat, different kind of technologies with the cloud really excite me right now. And that's kind of where I want to dive deep into this year. However, I will say as a side note, it is easy in this industry to be sidelined or attracted to what the hottest thing is. So, whether it be right now with Bitcoin being so popular or AI being popular, it's easy to want to just kind of veer off when things get popular, but trying to find technologies that interest you, but also you can see long term.
So, okay, so that is what you do during the day, but there's another big part of what you do, which is how we connected actually, which is the Tiff In Tech work. Now we're going to ask the same question. What is it that you do with Tiff In Tech? What is it all about?
For sure. So with Tiff In Tech, it's really a platform, through Instagram, YouTube, and I do a monthly newsletter. And essentially it started out of a need for myself, in the sense that when I was getting into tech, I felt very alone. And though I didn't have the support of a community, I didn't really have any friends who were in the industry. So in turn, I thought, if I feel this way, there must be others who feel this way. And that's how Tiff In Tech started. It was for the reason of supporting, uplifting others, getting people curious about technology, making it accessible. A lot of individuals, and myself included, when they look at the tech industry and it's something they're interested in, there's almost seems to be this wall that you have to, have a master's to get into, or this or that. And that's not the case. There's so much opportunity for so many different individuals and different roles. So now today I've been doing Tiff In Tech for 2.5 years, and continuing with the goal of supporting and uplifting others in the industry and just bringing more awareness around it.
So yesterday, and now if you're listening to this or watching this in the past, because we're going to share this later. Yesterday was International Women's Day. And, I think I can only imagine that the role of women in STEM and promoting it must be a factor in the program, what you're creating. Tell me about that.
For sure. It's a huge factor. And one of the reasons for that was because I don't know the current statistic right now, but tech is a very male dominated industry. And I think a lot of times women are intimidated or inhibited to break into that industry. I have a lot of women messaging me, I really want to get in the industry, but do you even talk to other girls or women, or is there, it seems as though it's just this male industry. And I really wanted to break down those walls too, and build a community around women uplifting and supporting each other. And every day I get so many wonderful messages from women, or even ladies in high school, and that just makes it really all worth it.
Well, I think now I'm going to have to dive into a little bit of Tiff In Tech so people can understand you. You've got this very large and growing community. Can you just explain a little bit? I know you said you do posts and you do have a newsletter, but how many people are following you right now?
So for my Instagram right now, it's just over 100,000. And for YouTube, it's over 50,000. And then I am in the world of TikTok, trying to do some fun educational TikToks and humorous ones. And for that, we're 40,000. But Another really interesting number for Instagram is something called reach and impressions. So that's how many people are seeing your content and reached by your content. And on average, every 30 days, it's around 3 million. So it's really interesting because on Instagram you can see the data and the statistics and all that. So it's been really interesting and rewarding to see how many people are interested in tech.
So let's go back then, because this is, first of all, congratulations on the success to date. It is truly remarkable. And I think it's important for people to understand how challenging it can be to get that number of impressions, that number of followers, and the data that you've just shared is very impressive. Let's go back. When did you start Tiff In Tech, and how long has it taken you to build this up?
I started Tiff In Tech 2.5 years ago. And I would say the first solid year, maybe a year and a few months, I was just kind of really like any startup, a lot of times just trying out different things, seeing what stuck, what people were engaging with or interested in. And I'm I guess maybe from my tech side, I love the data. I love looking at why things are working and aren't working through the numbers and that. So I just started gravitating and analyzing the data that these platforms provided to you and seeing, oh, people really like, humorous videos mixed with some educational content. Oh, they like this. And having more of a strategy, treating it as like a business really helped as well.
So I love to hear about the entrepreneurial side of things. When you said, you experimented a little bit. What was, if you don't mind sharing, and again, this is way off the list of questions that I shared with you,
Totally fine.
but it's coming to me as you're talking about it. What is the most interesting experimental thing that worked, and what's one that didn't, if you don't mind sharing?
That's a great question. One that didn't work. One that was, actually, when I first started the platform, my interest was in tech, but I also wanted to marry that at the time with, I'm really interested in green beauty. So when I started the platform, I would actually do, a post on tech, and then the next post would be green beauty. And I very quickly realized that it was not going to work to do completely two things that have nothing to do with each other. So that was something that definitely didn't stick. And if I had to make a decision at that point, which area I really wanted to go into, and I decided with tech because it was really the main focus of it. I mean, the name was Tiff In Tech, and my whole goal was to really support and lift others, especially women in the industry. And I just thought I could marry that with something else at the time, but it didn't flow very well. Something that has stuck recently, I would say, it's been with the data, it's been a lot of really kind of funny and quirky videos. And I think that's because the TikTok side of things is really taken off. So I think that kind of trickles into other platforms too, as the content people want to see. So that's right now, but that won't be forever. Yeah.
So just for those of you that haven't got, you can go and find Tiff In Tech on Instagram at Tiff In Tech. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And so I was on there this weekend, scrolling through, and I see you do kind of some sped up videos with content to say what it feels like when my code doesn't work, or when I can't figure it out. It's something, and so it's actually tapping in a kind of a visual humor, but tapping into the mindset of what it's like to work in this field.
Exactly. Yes, definitely.
I know I probably just made something that was actually really funny and not funny by explaining it. So I'm sorry about that.
No, not at all. It's so true. I feel like you're completely right. Even my mom now, who has very little tech experience or exposure other than her iPod or her iPhone, now she can kind of, I'll be FaceTiming her talking. She'll kind of sometimes make like a joke reference to something I did. I'm like, how do you know? Oh, okay, you saw the video. So, you're completely right.
So tell us some of the highlights of your work. What are some of the things that you're most proud of with Tiff In Tech?
With Tiff In Tech, the things I am most proud of 100% are the messages I receive from others.
Hmm.
I can't tell, like, if it wasn't for that kind of, to hear that you're making an impact on even one person's day, hour, maybe year or life is just, it makes everything worth the time, the energy worth it. Especially from, I get a lot of messages from young women in high school that were, they really wanted to do it, but they get into tech, but they didn't know it was, they should, or if it was possible. And a lot of people still have the stereotypes of, you're not going to talk to anyone, it's going to be socially awkward people, and just these not, amazing, there's some not positive stereotypes, and I really wanted to break those. So hearing that others, when they see my videos or hear my story, feel inspired enough to actually pursue a career in the industry.
And so you've actually received messages from someone saying, I'm now doing a degree and or I've decided to apply for this job.
For, yes, tons. And also I had what was it, 2 days ago, there was a lady who was in university. I can't recall what she was currently going to school for, but she decided, because of I guess her experience following along with Tiff In Tech, to switch actually a lot of her courses to more of the computer science route. So things like that is just, it's very rewarding to hear.
No kidding. Well, that's just amazing. Congratulations. Now let's get into like the minutia of things. So you have kind of, I would say it seems like you've kind of got two full-time jobs, coding and working as a programmer and technical consultant at or technology consultant at IBM, but then you've got Tiff In Tech. So what does a day in the life look like for Tiff Janzen?
Oh, that's a great question. It definitely varies. Right now, because I've been at home for the past year now, it's more so, wake up, try and not open my computer or phone first thing, rather go for a walk, get some fresh air, move a little bit. And then my number one priority Monday through Friday is my day job, IBM. So after meetings for that in the morning, getting to work on my tickets for coding. Contrary to popular belief, there is a lot of communication between myself and others on the team. Sometimes I wish it was just me sitting there with a computer, but a lot of times there has to be, from the design team to the people testing the code to the product manager to my manager. There's just a lot of back and forth. So I try and have my Tiff In Tech content already planned out for the day. And when I was going into office, this would mean that I would book off most Saturdays and go into a studio or at my house and just batch content that I could put out through the week. Now, because we're at home, it's a bit easier, because once my day ends at IBM, I can make that content for the next day. So it's a balancing act right now, but usually, honestly, by 6 p.m., everything's put away, and I'm just it's me time, family time.
Lovely. So how many hours a week do you focus on creating Tiff In Tech content?
That's a good question, and I should really keep track. I get asked that quite a bit, and I wish I need to keep track of it more. I mean, oh, I would say I don't. Maybe total, maybe 4 hours a week.
Wow.
Maybe I would say
Hmm.
there's a lot more that goes into behind the scenes with the emails, and the different kind of partnerships and that side of things. And for that, I have two other people who help me, as well as a video editor for my third person. So a lot of times it's just making the raw content, sending it over, they edit it and get it back to me. Otherwise, if I didn't have the support of a few other people, it would be a full-time job.
Yeah. So how do you, in your spare time, how do you find the room to, or where do you go, I should say, to learn about new areas of technology, whether it's technology or coding or Where do you go? What are your secret sources?
Yeah. To stay up to date in tech as a whole, so whether it be a new gadget that's coming out or news on a shift in a company, anything like that, I really like to just go to different blog posts, I guess you could call, whether it be wired.com, The
Yep.
Verge. I'm trying to think of a few others. I honestly, a lot of times just Google tech news and then the most popular ones pop up and I scan them throughout the day.
Have you ever checked out MIT Daily? Did you ever go to that one?
Yes, you know what? I haven't recently though, but that is a great source.
Yeah, I haven't either in a while, but
Yeah.
for some reason it was pre-pandemic. I used to go to it quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of go in phases with different resources, but I'm not currently actually, I'm not a podcast person, but I need to get back into it because I really enjoy it. I just kind of
Yeah.
fell off the wagon.
So you have communication is obviously a big part of what you do in your IBM work. You said, you have meetings and you're communicating with other team members. But obviously how you're going to communicate some big ideas are via Instagram, YouTube, or Snapchat. Sorry, you didn't say Snapchat. You said
TikTok.
TikTok. Sorry, that was a very
No.
2005 reference. Okay, no. So with those tools at your disposal, is there a process that you go through to help kind of distill how you're going to share this big idea? Maybe you can walk me through that process?
For sure. Well, I'll walk you through the process and it's sometimes it's a challenge as well before I even get to the process because it has to be very vetted. So especially when I'm doing educational content, it's not as though I mean, I wouldn't want to put misinformation out to even one person, of course, but when you're putting it out to a large audience, there's a lot of eyes on you and a lot of critics. And you don't want to spread misinformation, of course, but it comes down to even if you pronounce something wrong or use a definition wrong, you will get tons of messages to let you know that you didn't do it correctly. So when I'm making content, especially the educational side of things, which is more so on YouTube, it starts with a big idea. And then from there, it kind of trickles down in the sense, I know what topic I want to cover. And then my research begins. Okay, this is what I know about it already. Where are my learning gaps? So then I start doing some reading, finding different resources, and kind of find tooth and pick, combing through it anyways.
Yeah.
And to the point where then I build myself some talking points, some different facts in there, where these are found, these facts, and breaking it down very granularly. But it takes a lot of time and kind of as like a to-do list or anything like that, like starting with something big and then, you're going to the grocery store, what ingredients do you need, and breaking it down.
Yeah. So, I say in my coaching work with leaders um, on breaking down their content, it is all about structure, simplifying it with structure. It sounds like you've got a simplification process that you follow and to kind of get it down right. And then of course you're starting from a really honorable place. You want to make sure that it is correct and that, that you're not getting emails from people or notes from people saying, hey, that definition's incorrect.
Yeah.
I want to pause on the questions that I'm asking right now and just remind everybody that's tuning in to be able to drop in a question via the chat. Mary Lou is going to be, who's on our team here, is going to be double checking those questions. And there's a lovely comment from Batul. I don't know if you can see that, Tiff. Batul says, I really love your TikTok videos because I can relate to it and I feel everyone in tech can relate.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great comment, but I think it's, when you think about it, what you're doing is you're creating a community, or you're joining or including a community in, or bringing it together in a new way that may not always feel like they're understood. And so let's talk about understanding and breaking these things down. you have to deliver presentations for your work?
On a small scale at this
Okay.
moment.
So I was going to ask you, what is the most important or the biggest
Mm.
presentation that you've ever had to deliver from a, and I'm thinking that it's probably got some complexity into it, but maybe it doesn't. It could have been a public speech that you had to give somewhere else. What comes to mind?
What comes to mind isn't actually, it's my first job I had that I felt that experience a lot. So my first job prior to IBM, I was at a non-for-profit startup. And essentially what we did there was we provided these tablets, these Android tablets to refugee camps throughout the world or people without access to internet of any sort. And we would ship these tablets filled with education. And the education was based on what they asked for. We didn't decide what they should learn, they tell us. So I was there for 2 years, and because we were non-for-profit, we were a small company. Well, we were actually about 20 people, and they're still operating today. But a lot of times, being a startup and non-for-profit, although my job was a developer, I'd also have to be part of the pitches, the preparing for that, and come into those as more of a from a technical standpoint, if a partner's had any technical questions or how is this going to function. So I definitely felt throughout those presentations the pressure of having to present this big pitch, and it wasn't necessarily the stress of just making sure it went well, but it was our team was very open about the finance situation, and it was sometimes, if we don't land this, we're going to be shutting down in 2 months kind
Oh,
of.
that's a lot of pressure.
It was, yeah. So that was definitely, I would say, to answer your question, the biggest kind of presentations that I've had to prepare for.
Obviously, it went well because you said they're still around.
They are,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, yes. They're doing great now. So it was a really interesting experience for sure.
Um, how important is communication in the work that you do?
It's everything. I couldn't do my work. I could do my work, I guess, if I worked. I was going to say if I worked independently, I could do it if I was a freelancer, but still you need to communicate with the client. I couldn't do my work without communication, and having good communication is something that can, if I communicate, sometimes I have learned if I communicate, say, a question to, if I need help on something, I communicate a question to my manager. If I don't communicate that in a very clear way, especially now that we're all virtual, it can be a question that we have a conversation about for, I don't know, say an hour. And then I say, oh, that's what I meant. Whereas if it's clear communication, it can be resolved in, say, 2 minutes. And it can be really that different. So communication's huge.
Do you find that on projects, sometimes you're stuck in what I call the quagmire of lack of communication, where you've got a half dozen to a dozen people on a Zoom call, and they're struggling to figure out the solutions. But if they just said it this way at the beginning or put a little more thought into it, you wouldn't be in the quagmire. Is that something you've experienced?
Oh, for sure, definitely on a very frequent basis, and I think, one of the good things about being virtual is you really have to be aware of your communication even more so, because it's not as easy. Well, you can share screens, but it's not as easy as just being in person and pointing, hey, this isn't working, and just quickly iterating. You need to communicate your problem, and they need to communicate back the solution.
Right, and often what we say sometimes in our programs is that identifying and clarifying what the problem is or the question is sometimes the hardest part, because figuring once that's right, that we can get towards the answer. But sometimes really getting that clear is really tough.
It definitely is. I started, actually, when I'm asking a question, I will write out, I'll delete it afterwards, but I will start my sentence with, my question is, and then I have to actually put the question in there, because I found myself just rambling on about what the problem was, but not getting to the actual question.
Oh, excellent. I love the fact that you've got these little tools and techniques that you're using to get there. That's excellent. There are folks here who are in tech, who are from around the world. What advice would you give those working in a scientific or technical field?
Mm.
Is there any kind of advice for people who are starting out?
For sure. I think my biggest piece of advice is to find your community. And when I say community, that could be one person, that could be 10 people. It doesn't have to be a large number per se, but I have found throughout, for me personally, my tech career, from breaking into the industry to where I currently am, having individuals to uplift you, support you, and just be there when you need to talk or bounce ideas off has made all the difference, especially in an industry like tech where things are constantly changing pretty much every day, and it can feel as though you're falling behind or you're not where you need to be. So having finding your community or someone to support you has been massive for me, and it's always my biggest piece of advice. And to find someone to support you if you don't have, a friend that can, or anything like that, is I found a lot of people who I keep in touch with weekly now. I found a lady through Instagram that works at Shopify, and we connected years ago. She's now one of my best friends, and even through LinkedIn, just reaching out to people and reaching out to them with a very clear point, clear reason as to why you are, and making them feel as though that them giving their time, you'll hear what they're saying, you'll listen in turn. But there's so many ways. I think just reaching out to people too.
So the work you do, both for Tiff In Tech and for at IBM, is as a non-technical person, I'm not a coder, I'm not a scientist or a technologist, is very complex. So how do you help people understand something that's very complex? I even had this idea as I was preparing, to like, could I ask you to teach me something complex about coding without any props or anything like that? So how do you go about it? What do you do to help people understand a very complex concept or technology?
I think that's one of the advantages I have utilized with my experiences of coming from a non-technical background and then just getting into the tech industry. It didn't kind of flow all throughout tech. So I just take how I felt and how I learned a lot of things through storytelling and switch that when I'm doing tech examples. So for example, on my Instagram, I do sometimes 30-second videos where it's explaining a very technical topic, such as, say, for example, an API. And for me, when I was learning that topic, I couldn't.
All right, let's just, for those people who are not technically savvy, what is an API?
Okay, well, I'll explain to you what an API is, as though I was explaining it on my Instagram video. Awesome. Or to someone non-technical. So an API, or application programming interface, what it is imagine you're at a restaurant and you're with a friend, you have a menu. An API, for example, is the waiter, you could say. So without a waiter, how are you going to communicate to the chef? You can't. You're sitting at your table. Your chef is in the kitchen cooking. You can't pass on your order to him. And that's where a waiter comes in. The waiter's job, out of many things, one of it is to take your order and that information and carry that information to the chef. Once the chef has made your food, it's your waiter's job then to take that food, carry it, and deliver it back to you. And that's essentially all an API is it takes your information, your request, and returns the chef's response, which is the food.
Okay. So and I guess it's more important when you've got a custom order that they capture it, and so that API can become very advanced as well.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So I try and just find fun stories that through everyday life.
Love that. That's great. And that is such an excellent example. It's what we call in our programs the use of rhetoric, right? And the rhetoric has a pretty negative connotation. But in this case, it's a metaphor that you're using through a story that helps bring your complex idea or concept to life. So that's excellent. Now I know what an API is too. And now I've seen it in writing, and I've been asked for it on my in my learning programs and as I've been developing them. So now I know. So let's talk about the vision for Tiff In Tech. You've got this. You've got over. I think you said over 1 million impressions. Did I? Am I misquoting?
3 million.
3 million. Sorry, 3 million impressions. 100,000 followers. What's the vision for Tiff In Tech?
The vision is to create something that is larger than me, I guess you could say. And what I would like to do, not this year, but kind of in the background, working on it, starting it this year and getting the right people in place, is my grandiose vision would be to create an online school. So where individuals throughout the entire world can sign up. There'll be different courses you can take and to different levels, things like that. But that would require much bigger than myself. It would require hiring the right team, the right instructors. But that is the vision, the goal.
So to build an online school to help people who are not as comfortable in STEM become more comfortable in the technology side of things?
Yeah, so it would start out with a few courses. So for example, there would be one course on, say, web development, and that would be for beginners. So for example, Nick, yourself, if you wanted to learn how to build a website, you could sign up for this 8-week course, and by the end of it, you'd have the skills to successfully do that.
Nice.
And then there would be another course for, say, advanced web development for people who have either taken the first course or work in the industry, and they can take this to build upon that. So building from there, and then you could, hire specialists in, say, AI or machine learning, and kind of go the trickle effect, but starting with beginner courses.
Wonderful. And do you have a sense of when you want to bring that to reality? Do you have a timeline, or is that kind of out there right now?
It's out there right now. I've been pushing to start it to really start the ball rolling in 2022. But we'll see how things go this year to build that foundation to get going on that.
Awesome. I'm going to just ask a couple of more questions, and I'm going to remind everyone that your questions are important too. So please drop them into the chat. We're going to have time to go through them at the very end, which is just a few minutes, or in the last 15 minutes, which is just a few minutes from now. Tiff, let's talk about what you've done really well, which is building a following. What's the secret? What's the secret to building a following so successfully and so quickly?
I think, at the end of the day, it's about a few different things. The first being consistency. So posting on a very regular time frame. When you think about these platforms, essentially all they are different algorithms put together. So when you are working with, say, Instagram, you're essentially working with an algorithm. And how do you make that algorithm happy? What does it want to see from you? And that's consistency. They want to see you on the application. They want to see you using that application to keep people on that app. And so that's number one. Number two, though, is communication. So you can be as consistent as you would like and reach as many people as you would like, but how do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them coming back for more? And for me, that's been communication, which has been one of the biggest challenges as I scale and grow, because when you get over, I don't know how many, I think we counted today, get close to 100 messages a day just on Instagram. That's not including the emails you get, the other platforms.
Yeah.
You can't communicate with everyone, but building those relationships and responding to people, that's how you build those that community sense of it. So that's been a very big challenge for me, although I do find that to be one of the most important things. So it still is worth my time. And the other is quality. So what does my audience want to see? What is resonating? And then that goes back to seeing where the numbers are. What's what are the most people gravitating towards.
So are you looking at your statistics like every week, every day? You know, how often are you looking at your measurement?
Every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then so you'll look at something, you go, well, that landed. People really like that. Um, and you'll kind of follow along that bread trail or a trail of breadcrumbs kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't do, change my plan from day to day based on the numbers, but just see where the numbers are starting to trend and creep. And then if, say, for example, one of our videos a while ago reached over 1 million views. So then I thought, okay, let's do something similar. So we did something similar, and that as well got 1 million views. So I did another one, and that as well got another 1 million views. So now I haven't done one in a while about what was trend that was doing so well, but kind of seeing like, oh, this did really well. So what if we just tweak it and do something similar?
We have a question from Batul. Batul asks, what is your advice for women in STEM in a masculine society? Because as you know, the Middle East is in a masculine society and doesn't believe a lot in women's abilities.
Thanks for your question, Batul. My advice would be similar to the advice I gave earlier, where if you are a woman in STEM and you're, living in the Middle East in a very masculine society, one of the things that I think maybe would be helpful is to find that support group and finding even one other woman in STEM, or even if you don't know another woman in STEM, finding one of your friends that can kind of support you along your journey. Because it sounds like in that situation, it can feel very alone or isolating. So finding even one other person to carry you, to be there with you through your journey, and to also keep in mind, which is easier said than done, but just keep on reminding yourself that you deserve to be there just as much as anyone else. You were hired at that company for a reason if you're with a company, or if you're at school, you got accepted into that program for a reason. And just focus on your own path and you'll get to where you need to be.
I think that's inspiring and terrific answer, Tiff. And I would say that not from a perspective of tech, but from a perspective of following what you're interested in, know that, Batul, you're likely not the only person who feels this way, which means that there are other members of that community that you can find out there. So I think it's important to just know that you're not alone in what you're pushing for. So we both wish you good luck with that, and thank you for your question. I'm going to ask one more question about communication, and then we'll see if others have any other questions. Your second kind of big principle or thrust was making sure that it was communication. I have a business. I use social media. I can tell you that I've got a book that's coming out in a few weeks. I've got lots of content up here, lots of content on my hard drive. And also I've got a virtual program that people can download and work on. So lots of content. But oh my goodness, I think that finding the right content to communicate is, that is going to gravitate towards what people are interested in is really challenging. So do you have an approach aside from looking just at the statistics that allows you to kind of come up with new concepts and tools?
For sure. Well, actually, so one of the things I did last November was I put together an ebook, and this ebook was based around, I noticed a trend. I was listening to what questions I was getting asked the most. And there was a trend of people asking questions maybe in a different way, but essentially the same questions over and over again. There was about 15 of them, 10 or 15 of them. And so I listened to what people were asking for, what the questions were, and created, in this example, an ebook around that, answering all those specific questions. But that's really how I frame all of my content as well, other than the numbers side of things, is what am I hearing on a continual basis? What are people asking, you know, questions around, and how do I share that information in a broader kind of way? So really just listening to others.
So you hear the question, and then do you kind of create a list of all the things you could cover under that question, and then do you look at, is it a video, is it a photo, is it a visual? Is that how you kind of go about it?
Yeah, I do that. And then also too, a lot of times if I create, for example, a smaller video, because I think maybe there's not as many people interested in a full topic on it, I'll start with just a 1-minute Instagram video. But then if I get some comments, quite a few comments being like, could you please talk about this more? Could you make a YouTube out of it? Then I'll listen to that and in turn make a YouTube video out of it. So just kind of trying to use my best judgment on, is this short form or long form content, but it's not always accurate. And in that case, just listening to what others want.
It seems to me, that you've got this really interesting brain, Tiff, if that's okay for me to say, because you've got this part of you that loves the coding and the technical consulting. Mm-hmm. And then the thing that you mentioned earlier is storytelling. So you've got this highly creative brain that is also must be quite logical and in problem solving. Which one comes to the forefront more often?
Oh, I would say the creativity side of things a little bit more than the logic. And I think that's also how I approach a lot of times my problem solving with coding, as much as it needs to be logic, but also finding maybe creative, not always, definitely not always, but sometimes finding creative ways to solve the problems as well.
Excellent. We have a few questions, so I'm really excited to dive into that. Batul had a follow-up, and then we have a question from Nikhil. Batul said, it's a second question. Batul is a second-year computer engineering student, but had the chance to start working in a half-time job in their field. I know I'm able to succeed, but I'm afraid because that's my first experience. So should I take the risk and start? And if yes, how can I overcome the fear?
That's a great question. I can completely remember those feelings as well. Your first technical job can be very intimidating, and especially it's one of those things where you don't know if how much support you're going to have immediately, or what the day-to-day is like. And so to answer your first question, you should definitely take the risk and start if it's something that you are intrigued by or interested in, which it sounds like it is if you're a second-year computer engineering student. And how to overcome the fear, I always say to myself, is what's worse than having fear and going for that opportunity is declining that opportunity, and you will have to live with the what if. And that's going to be stuck in your head. Well, what if I was really great at this? Or what if I really enjoyed this? But if you take that opportunity, just give it a shot and see how it goes. But I'm telling you, Batul, as a last thing, if you have had the opportunity, or they are bringing you on for this half-time job, it's because they want you. They want you to work for them. They believe in you. So just go for it.
Fantastic. Great advice, Tiff. Thank you for sharing. Nikhil has asked, do you have any tips and motivation for web development?
Great question, Nikhil. My tips would be, if you are someone if you need motivation in it, and say you're maybe self-learning or even at school, to remember to be patient with yourself. It's not something that you can necessarily pick up overnight, and that's okay. Trying to break it down into manageable pieces. And also what really helped me is having a timeline, or not a timeline, but a plan. And what I mean by that is, okay, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to focus on this specific programming language. And then once I master that, I will move on to this part, because it's so broad and there's so many things that you can really focus in on, that it's easy to get distracted. So ensure that you have a plan, look at what technologies are in demand, and focus in on that.
Fantastic. We have another question from Timothy. Timothy is asked if that or he starts by saying, the tech world is changing fast. How do you see this profession in 10 years? Do you think some skills will disappear or others be deepened? Excellent
Great.
question.
Yes, for sure. So yes, it's changing very fast. And in 10 years, at the rate technology is changing. Like I was just watching, to give you an example, it's called OpenAI. You can look it up after if you haven't heard of it, but OpenAI, they've developed this AI that it built Instagram in a minute, maybe under. It was, so yes, Timothy, it's changing very fast. So in 10 years, I can't even imagine where we will be. But skills will disappear and also be deepened. And I still think it's such a great industry to be in, because if you're in it, you can evolve and grow with it, and your role will change. But because you're in the industry, it will just continue to evolve. So it's still definitely worth getting into, but it will change.
I'm going to highly recommend this book on this very subject by Amy Webb. I don't know if you've read any of her stuff.
No.
She wrote The Signals Are Talking, but there's another one that she wrote on the future of AI and what it's going to do to the technology or to our world in general. It is she's a terrific writer and speaker, and definitely worth investing in checking out her books.
Amy Webb.
Look, we are sadly at the end of our time. And so first of all, I'm going to start by thanking the folks who are here today, who came back because of the technical challenges we had last week. So thank you for being here and asking these incredible questions, both personal and professional. So thank you for asking those questions. I also want to thank, who am I going to thank? I want to thank Tiffany. And Tiffany, this is our first conversation. Yeah, Mary Lou, let's have everyone give Tiffany a round of applause. I want to spend just a moment and explain what we do. We do things a little differently here at Kindler and Company. And as a gesture of thanks to you, Tiffany, we are going to be donating, Kindler and Company is going to be donating to the United Nations Global Sustainability Goal for Quality Education. And for those who don't know about these, there are 17 global sustainability goals identified by the United Nations. And as a learning and coaching company, Kindler and Company is targeting number 4 on this list, which is ensuring inclusive and quality education to promote lifelong learning for all. Now, how are we doing this? We are working with an organization called B1G1. And what they do is they help us literally solve this problem we donate money and it solves a specific problem. And so we are furnishing a lab a science lab in India for the next 7,300 days or 20 years, which goes a long way. So I just want to say on behalf of Kindler and Company, Tiffany, thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for being here today. And thank you for doing all you do for people in STEM, representing women in STEM and encouraging people to get involved in STEM.
Oh, thank you so much, Nick. And that is, I absolutely love what you are doing with this, with donating. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be chatting with you today.
Thank you. And for those of you that are here for the first time, I want to just share with you, as we are still here in lockdown, you can hear a dog barking next door probably. But I'm going to let you know that we have I think it's in a week and a half. Our next conversation is with Debbie Gamble. She is the Chief Innovation Officer at Interact. And then in April, we have Jordan Berman joining us on this conversation. And he is Vice President at Apotex and the author of The Trust Trifecta. So I want to thank you again, Tiffany, and for everybody that joined us here today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Bye-bye.